Is anatta something we can cultivate directly, or does it come about indirectly? If directly, how does the self or ego not get involved?
Well, we don't use words like directly or indirectly, I suppose. And I think what you mean by that, do we actively work on an intellectual level, I would say, to bring that about? Or do we do something else and the knowledge comes about? I think it is indirectly, so I'm going to be able to avoid your whole "if directly" clause, no? Because I think it is indirectly. You don't think about non-self. The practice that we do, let's give a whole overview of the practice that we do, and then you'll understand, I think. Hopefully it will help anyway. The practice that we follow is called insight meditation based on the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So there are 2 parts to the practice. We're not practicing vipassana. No, you can't practice vipassana in an absolute sense or in a literal sense. You practice mindfulness. You practice looking at things. No? You practice looking at things as they are. And you practice seeing things as they are. You practice what is called pati sati matta, this bare mindfulness of things specifically as they are. Pati means specifically, matta means bare or just, sati means mindful. So this one word that the Buddha uses to explain the meaning of the word sati in this context means to see things just as they are, and fully have that be your full attention. So this is what we try to cultivate, this state of full awareness, or this state of exact awareness or exact remembrance of things as they are. As a result of doing that, based on the body, the feelings, the mind, and the dhammas, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, there arises knowledge of impermanence, knowledge of suffering, and knowledge of non-self. Why? Because that's the nature of these things. That's how these things are. When we look at things and see things as they are, we can't help but see their characteristics. And their characteristics happen to be, you could say it's just by chance, or it's just how the world is formed, or whatever, happen to be they're impermanent, they're unsatisfying, and they're uncontrollable, or they're impermanent, suffering, and non-self. And so that's where that's where non-self comes in. It comes about as a realization of seeing things as they are. Like our teacher said, when you see a tiger, you see its stripes. You don't have to look at the tiger and see where are its stripes, or how do I find its stripes, or does this tiger have stripes? As soon as you see the tiger, you can't help but in seeing the tiger to see its stripes. So the same goes by seeing the characteristics of reality. Now, you could still argue that any practice of meditation is egotistical. Is the ego getting in the way? Because there is the intention to do it. And so this goes back to the desire, it goes back to forcing, and there was even one monk who went so far, and he's quite a famous monk in Thailand, who said, mindfulness is non-self, so the idea of developing it is therefore fallacious. It's not proper for a person to try to develop mindfulness because it's non-self. This is clear from the Abhidhamma, or from the Buddha's teaching. So you have a big problem there. So his theory was just to have people sit near him and they'd become mindful by approximation or by association, with the wise. And there's kind of something to that in terms of thinking things arising by themselves, but it's such a dangerous thing, and I can't help but think that it's going to lead his students astray and cause them to be lazy and to waste a lot of time to get very little results, because while they're sitting there next to him, waiting for the mindfulness to arise and waiting for wisdom to arise, they could be actively developing it. And as a result, getting very good results. During the practice, you don't want to be pushing it. You don't want to be, actively, forcing the mindfulness to arise or so on. But there is a inclination of mind that has to come about, an investigation. The mind has to make the choice that instead of, following concepts and ideas and judgments and so on, instead it's going to follow the reality and focus on the reality. To say that there is no self and there is no soul, as I said, is just to denounce those things that have no bearing on reality. Experience is not automatic. It's not to say that there is not choice made. There is in fact choice made at every moment. We make a choice between many different things at every moment. What the we is, what the I is irrelevant. No, the idea of whether it be a soul or a self or this or that, these are all have no basis. It is what it is. There is the experience, and the experience is made up of choices. If we make a choice to judge something, then there is the choice of judgment arises. If there is the choice of seeing things as they are, then there is that choice. If you don't take that choice, then the habits in the mind, are going to lead you, or you're making a choice anyway. You make a choice when you choose to do nothing. And so, if you were to make the argument that the ego gets in the way every time you meditate, then it's a misunderstanding of what we mean by non-existence of ego. We don't mean that there is no choice and no effort to be made in the present moment of any kind. What we mean is that things like ego and self and me and mind don't have any place in reality, because there are no entities. There is only experience. But that experience is very personal. It is very individual. And so there are moment-to-moment choices. At any moment, you can verify this by saying, now I'm going to make a choice, and choosing something. At any moment, especially when you practice meditation, you can see that in fact we are quite empowered. That at every moment we can make a choice to be mindful or to cling.
I would like to point out something about how your question is put. Is anatta something we can cultivate? That in itself is cannot be said directly or indirectly, because it's neither nor. Anatta is not something that we can cultivate. Anatta is a state of mind, or is an insight that arises in your mind that you can understand, you can see through, you can understand that something is out of control without being possible to be controlled. That there is no such thing within yourself or outside yourself that could be controlling anything. So the way you write your question is already, I don't want to say wrong, but kind of wrong, because it's misleading. It's coming from the point that anatta is something, the opposite of atta, and it is not that. Anatta is that there is nothing.
It's giving up the idea of atta, no?
Yeah.
Just like impermanence is not a thing that exists. No? It's giving up the idea that there is permanent things that exist. You see that there is no permanent things that exist. Yeah. And suffering is giving up the idea of finding satisfaction.
Yeah, so you can't really cultivate it. What you can do is you can cultivate your mind. You can practice mindfulness, and you can do vipassana meditation and understand anatta.
And let go of atta. No, I mean, in the end, it's all. If you want to understand Buddhism simply, it's, as the Buddha said, it's quite simple: giving up clinging. Why? What are these things? People always wonder, what are these things? Impermanent, suffering, and non-self. When am I going to see them? They're the letting go. No, there when you see this stuff is garbage. It's useless. It's meaningless. It has no benefit to me. There's nothing in the world that when I cling to it is going to bring me happiness. It's so simple that we miss it, and we want to read more. We want to, where's the real stuff, and to start reading the Buddha's books and these huge books and all of the Buddha's teaching that is gathered together, trying to find the essence, and you miss it. The Buddha said it on the first page: Four Noble Truths. What is this? Suffering is to be understood, and the cause of suffering is to be abandoned. So all you have to do is look at things and see that they're suffering. Once you see that they're suffering, you let go of them. That letting go is the realization of impermanent suffering and non-self. It's a realization of a lot of things, and the Buddha just gave the salient points: these impermanent suffering and non-self. It's a realizing that things are not beautiful. It's a realizing that things are not stable, that things are not controllable, that they're not maintainable. All of the they're not reliable, or they're not meaningful. So many different things. It's the realization that they're useless, basically. What the Buddha says, Sabbe Dhamma Nalang Abhinewe Saya. This is the first thing. All you need to know to start practicing the Buddha's teaching, to start practicing mindfulness, is that no dhammas are worth clinging to. That's enough theory to get you started on the practice.